What's up, guys? On the desk here from the Ventura County Brewery Show. Coming back on this episode, we have Andy Carter, president of the Southern California Homebrewers Association, still affiliated and past president of Vibe Homebrewers Club. He's an avid homebrewer. We hung out at Five Threads in Westlake Village, California. Had some of their beer. He brought some of his own. We talked about lots of things. So enjoy the show. All right, Andy Carter. We're here at Five Threads in Westlake Village, California. It is a year since I've seen your face.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, unmasked.
Yeah. We work together, we see each other every day, but due to whatever's going on, we have to cover our faces. So.
Yep.
Why don't you give everyone a resume?
So, Andy, I've been homebrewing for about a decade or so, doing all types of things, but mostly with the homebrewing. I helped run the Ventura Independent Beer Enthusiasts. I was the president of that club, homebrew club, for as well, since from 2013 on to 2018, 2019. Mm-hmm. And then around that same time, I started working for and on the board of directors of the California Homebrewers Association. And so that's a nonprofit in California meant to encourage homebrewing and support homebrewing. But the main thing we do is we run the Southern California Homebrewers Festival. Mm-hmm. So that's a big fest down in usually in Temecula. It's been going on since the 90s. Mm-hmm. Last couple ones we've missed, but it's been fun. I've been run 3 of those, and it's a big homebrew festival, and I'm sure we'll get into the details of that soon enough.
Yeah. So why did you start homebrewing?
It's a good question. It's always one that comes up because someone says, "Well, what brought you to do this?" And near the end of college, I was drinking beer already, but I like craft beer and I like making things.
Yeah.
And so I was reading about what homebrewing was, and back in 2008 when I started homebrewing, I started reading about it. There was good information, but it was all a little sparse, and so I started and I felt okay at it in 2008, 2009. But the beers were not nearly as good as what I was buying.
Right.
And even back then, the beers were pretty good. You could buy craft beers. And so I think I just kind of plugged along with it for a while. And I got into it just for the creativity aspect and what I could make. But it's also kind of just I like making stuff. So it's that's my to do. So.
Did you go all in at the beginning, or did you
I started with
piecemeal it, or
piecemeal. You start with kits, and even today, your first kit might be what's called a malt extract. So a lot of the work's been done for you up front, and that's what I started with. But you quickly find you're more flexibility if you do something that's called all grain, which is more like professional brewing, where you're buying the grains and milling it yourself. And that really jumped I felt it jumped my quality, though I've brewed very good beers that are malt extract, so that's a little different.
Your quality, or you can control what you like to drink more?
I think both. So one quality thing is your skill as a brewer or anything, but as you do more batches, you get more comfortable with the process, like any hobby. And with the all grain, which is taking the barley malts and milling it and mashing it and all those things, you have more potential flexibility. You can pick this and pick that, whereas liquid malt extract or dry malt extract, which is where they've done some of the work for you, there's less options. So some people claim it tastes worse.
Well, because you can jack your own beer up.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's more things. There's more things there. But yeah. So
I'm assuming when you get the kit with the malt extract already done for you,
Yep.
It's this is good. Use it.
Yeah, this is good, but it's kind of one note, or maybe it's in spanning a specific part of beer, and you can't expand beyond that.
Yeah.
So it's limited in some ways. So, but I could also contend you still should build great beer with liquid malt extract or dry malt extract. You just need to know what you're working with. It's like anything. What are your ingredients? What are you working with?
Yeah.
And playing to your ingredients.
Right. Yeah. So if you're a chef, right? Yeah. You can make a good meal with whatever's in
whatever you have. Yeah. With craft singles and some toast.
For sure.
You'll make a great meal.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
So how many batches until you got drinkable beer?
I think the beer I was making, I felt good with it, and then maybe a few years in, I felt I wasn't meeting the mark. And so there was a period of time where I almost didn't stop homebrewing because I felt like my beer wasn't as good or wasn't what I was buying. And after that,
Hobby.
Any hobby, you kind of get through a slump.
Yeah.
And after that, now I think even today's beer, which I think is very high quality, craft beer has really moved leaps and bounds in the last decade. Not only the quality, but the variety.
Yeah.
Homebrewing always has the ability to say, well, I'm going to brew exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And so that makes it always better than what you could buy.
For sure.
So I think it took me 2 or 3 years to make beer that I was like, oh yeah, I could always do this. This is my hobby. This is what I want to do. Yeah. And so it's always a mixed bag. So sometimes you make a batch you don't like. Other people like it.
You give it away.
Give it away, which I give a lot of beer away.
Yeah.
But it all depends. And then I think the big cool part of craft or homebrewing, which is I brought a couple beers for us to try about what you couldn't, we have a saying, or I came up with a saying at Vibe, hashtag can't buy this.
Yeah.
Because you literally can't be bought. The homebrew can't be bought, and
Right.
it's so unique. It is unique to the point where you'll never find what we've made on the shelf anywhere. So
Is it too boring to make batch after batch of the same beer?
that's a good
do some
question.
home brewers like, I like this beer,
Yes.
and I'm going to make it forever?
Yeah, there's a local home brewer. He only makes triple IPAs.
Okay. Wow.
He loves triple IPAs.
Yeah.
He's very, very good at it.
Yeah.
So it's not just I like triple IPAs. He's making mediocre beer. He's not
Yeah.
only he's only making a couple styles, and he is one of the best makers of it. So
Yeah.
some people do that, and I think it just what do you want to get out of the hobby?
Yeah.
Some people only want to make certain kinds of foods or dishes.
Yeah,
They want
yeah.
to be the experts in that style.
For sure.
But it's almost like saying, like, is sushi rice boring to make? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you can make it so much better every time, and so it is its own thing to
Yeah.
perfect your way of doing it. So
Yeah.
I think every brewer is different. I think for me, I gravitate to certain styles of beer, but some people brew everything. Some people only make sour type beers. Some people only make lagers, and it's just whatever you want to make. So that's the flexibility of the hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's do all the home brewers, you all know each other?
Yeah, to some extent. I think when I was running really in the management role at Vibe, the president of Vibe, there would always be, it was interesting. You knew everyone around, but then every once in a while someone would come up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It would always happen during homebrew competitions. And another thing Andreas and I have done is homebrew competitions, judging homebrew competitions.
So there's always a dark horse, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
guy lurking
And-
in his basement.
And what is interesting about that is, and with the power of the internet, and that's how I learned a lot of my homebrewing, is that you can learn a lot without having to really interact with anyone.
yeah.
And then you show up out of nowhere, and you're like, wait, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And it's some person in, say it's a homebrew competition, and we've done in Thousand Oaks
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Ventura. It'll be someone that's in Camarillo that no one's ever heard of before.
Yeah.
And so what happened? Where did this person come from? So it's interesting like that, and it just shows the quality. Well, I really believe in clubs and organization and learning from other people in person. You can still make great beer just by yourself. You don't need a club. That was
Yeah.
that was 70 or sorry, like in the 70s and the 80s, then when a lot of the oldest homebrew clubs started, especially in California, there was no one else. How do you get ingredients? How do you get information? What's
All
real?
right.
What's not real?
Yeah.
Nowadays,
Trailblazers.
yeah. You don't have that as much with the internet. Everything's available online. Great information is available online. So,
And we're I mean, aside from home brewing, we're pretty lucky here in Ventura County. We have not only a lot of craft breweries,
Yes.
but everyone makes different types of beer,
yeah,
right?
I think that's absolutely right. Like, we're kind of this bordering the LA Ventura, but then if you go, you live in Ventura and you see a lot more of those breweries, is that everyone's got their niche. Though people always blur the lines of, you have to make an IPA, you have to make a lighter beer, but I'm going to make it this way, I'm going to make it that way. I think of Ventura County breweries, I think of like Enegrin, really lager focused. I think of Casa Agria, very sour barrel focused, but
Yeah.
then they also make great examples of other stuff. And
Yeah.
everyone's got their little thing, and I think some are more or less differentiated than others, but it's clear that no one's making beer that you wouldn't go and I'm going to go there and have a good time. I'm going to have a good time, buy a beer, have a good time, and that's what's going to happen.
You got to have your whatever draws your crowd, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can have
Yeah.
the most unique beer and it's very good.
Yeah.
If no one knows what it is, they're not going to come.
They're not going to come
check
by,
it
yeah.
out.
And that's why, I think what's cool about Enegrin was I saw them start from basically home brewers. And I think it's a big part of craft beer in general is that a lot of people start as home brewers, and then they mature into craft brewers, and then mature into really good craft brewers. Is that they start with some notion of like, okay, we can make beer, and then the Enegrin guys is specifically, starting with a 3-barrel homebrew, very small, basically a homebrew plus system, moving up to what they have now, and now they're, if they don't have national acclaim, they have international acclaim more or less, and they're just here, right? And so they've drawn that, and that's one thing is that they may have not have seen that path, but they got there from their quality and focusing on lagers specifically. So
And I would say they're very true to their style.
yes, correct.
Right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
not anything on the board that doesn't fall within their standards or their style.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Of we'd said who's picking, who makes what, and why they make it. It's a kind of a sign of a business choice, and also the brewing scene is like they'd done other styles of beer, but then they made a decision one day to only make German lagers, or really, really focus on that and really refine that, and that's why you see. Sometimes they make an IPA because they got to make an IPA sometimes, but they really want the lagers to really
Yeah.
be the best. So
Yeah, I would say they're one of my favorites. If they were in the opposite direction or I have to go home,
yeah.
they would.
Yeah.
I would stop by there more often.
Yeah.
Okay, home brewer. I want to start home brewing.
Sure.
I can go online and get the Amazon homebrew kit,
Sure.
or how would you, knowing what you know now, how would you start today?
So if I was thinking about home brewing, I think one place I think your best place to go is, for me, and this is how I would think of it, is that to find a local homebrew club and try to go to a meeting. And usually meetings are public. If there's not and that's always the thing when I started homebrewing, there wasn't a ton of public meetings because there wasn't a lot of clubs. So you need clubs around you. That's one thing. If there's no club around you, then you need to think of something else. But if you can go to a local homebrew club, and they can at least point you in the way of you should go to this shop or that shop, or what do you want to make? Sometimes there's people that are selling their old equipment, and maybe you can get a deal. I'm like, hey, I'm retiring or I'm upgrading. Here's my basic system, and if you feel that's the right way for you, you can essentially get someone's system, they'll show you how to use it, and then you're kind of upgraded immediately. Yeah, and that happens all the time. The other way to do it is you go to a local homebrew shop, and usually they have that starter kit. They have this introduction. If they're good, they have a class that you can take, and they'll show you the whole thing. And so I would say that. And what's different from when I started to now is when I started, there wasn't as much of an economy in homebrewing as there is today. So when I started, you get this basic stuff or very expensive stuff or custom built. Now there's a price point, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. You can spend kind of whatever you want to start, and you make great beer with all of those with really great information. So it is an upfront cost, and I think that's one thing I have tried to break with some of the homebrew starting kits. Is when you start homebrewing, you make about 5 gallons of beer, and that's the basic kit, and that's about 2 cases of beer, and that's fine. I mean, I don't think it's a bad volume, but I think you could make better beer to start off with spending less money if you did 2.5 or 3 gallons at a time. Because you can just maximize some of the benefits of brewing a smaller batch, where I think the beer quality gets higher and everything gets higher. Just the process of brewing is better at that small volume, and if it doesn't work out for you, well, it was less beer, so you may be disappointed if it was good and it was less. But
then you got to make it again.
We got to make it again. But you can kind of get started, and what I've done is I think I still have some of the original equipment, that's stainless steel that I bought. Though it's small, it works still at my scale, which is still I'm making only 5 or 10 gallons at a time, so I don't feel like I'm missing out those initial investments. So
how much footprint does it take in your
So I break it all down and put it all back together, but it's today we use, what didn't exist, which is a cool thing, what didn't exist back then was electric kettles. They were really non-existent. And now you can buy a 120 volt, 1500 watt, a kettle that fills, you can do about a 5 gallon batch. It's a little slow because it's only 110 volt. But you can buy a 220 version if you have that ability at your house. And I mean, that's only, this big, yay wide, and it's not big, it's lightweight, and you do all your brewing inside of it. It's like they call it a one vessel or uni-vessel brew system. And you can do your mash, which is the process of converting the malt sugars to something the yeast can ferment, and then you can boil in that, and it comes with a chiller, and you can chill the wort with that because you have to chill it down to allow the yeast to grow and ferment in that. You do it all in there. You need to have a separate vessel for fermentation, but with that and a fermenter, you're good to go, and it's not much space. It's actually very compact, which is pretty cool, and the price points are great. They're only depending on how you want to start brewing. If you're willing to put in the $300 or $400 for that system, you have almost everything you need without that, and that would have cost you thousands of dollars 10 years ago, or you'd build it yourself.
And any kick-ass home builds you've seen?
It depends. I think the one which it depending on what camp you're in,
or what would be the modification that you would need to make like a on-site mod. So are you buy your good homebrew system, but you say, you know what, it would be much better if they would have done this, and then you do that to the system. Have you ever modified something like that?
Not so much. I know other people have. I'm not as mechanically handy, I think, just because I don't have a workshop or whatever. But I've seen people take basically repurposed kegs is a big one, where they take a 15-gallon keg, they cut a hole in the top of it, and now it's a boil kettle. And so it's that kind of stuff. And people have gotten handy where they've added ports to things and things like that. In general, you don't do too much. But
they come ready to go out of the box.
Some people, definitely people do. Absolutely. They do whatever they want to make it work they want to do it. But that kind of culture, I don't know if I don't see it as much, and I've not done it as much, but it definitely exists. It's just to mod everything. We're good.
Thank you. Okay. All right. And if someone wants to attend a meeting around here, who would you
So yeah,
not to put you on the spot to pick teams or sides, but
yeah. Well, there's in the Ventura County area. There's one, the main one of the bigger clubs is the Vibe Ventura Independent Beer Enthusiasts, and we're about to start our public meetings again, live meetings again. So in June, July, we'll have one, and we typically do it at a brewery, and so everyone can show up, and we'll have like news, we'll share beers. Sometimes we have. The brewer or wherever we're meeting, we'll talk. We usually meet at Ventura Coast Brewing. And then if you're more in Thousand Oaks area, there's Thousand Oaks Homebrew Club. They meet again monthly. Public meetings will start again soon. And you can email both those clubs at vibebeer.com. And I think it's toked.com, or just search Thousand Oaks or Ventura Independent Beer Enthusiasts on social media. You'll find us. And then just reach out, and you can have a meeting. It'll be good. And it's always very casual. I think there's some clubs that are have enough members where they have to be more structured in their meetings, and I in my opinion, I think that the Vibe Homebrew Club and the Thousand Oaks ones are much more casual. You can show up, say hi, you made a beer, we'll try it with you, we'll give you an honest feedback about it. If there's issues, tell you what to do to fix it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I interviewed the Toke.
Courtney and Matt.
Yeah. And they were, that was their big thing. Like, it's like, anyone can come, and we'll let you taste beer, and we'll taste your beer, and we'll tell you what to do with it, and we won't give you a hard time about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because you want to be able to come back and have community, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We want you to make better beer. So.
For sure. All right. You brought beers.
I brought beers. So I brought these as kind of examples of what
repurposed. Oh no.
Vibe. These are real.
Dude,
real
this
beers.
is the labels real and everything. Look at that.
Yeah. This is back when I was very overachieving. With Vibe, what I alluded to earlier was things you can't buy, or things that you would not exist at other places. So I brought two beers. I think that it kind of encapsulate that kind of spirit of homebrewing. Yeah. So we'll start with the sour one, because I brought a sour, and then I brought a barrel.
So sour beer.
So we got a barrel-aged sour beer, and then a barrel-aged stout. So we'll start with the sour. And so the story behind this beer is Vibe had 2 wine barrels, and in beer brewing, many people, if you're making IPAs or stouts, that we call clean beer, or beer that doesn't have any bacteria or wild yeast in it. But in sour beer brewing, many people may be familiar with like Gozas or Berliner Weiss or something, but there's kind of another step of that, which is sour wild cultures like Brettanomyces and Pediococcus, and these wild things that inoculate the beer, add some acidity, but they add a lot of really cool flavors. And what we did was, you kind of, as it goes, and this is actually really borrowing from professional brewing, you tend to age these in wine barrels for a number of years. So Vibe picked up a couple wine barrels, and what we did was we all brewed a small amount of beer to add to the barrel, and then we let it age in the barrel.
All right.
So this was the 2016 vintage of that beer. And so what you do in that process is we aged it, and then until we felt it was ready to be removed, and then we all put it into our kegs. We took it home, and then a few of us, it's all on the label, hence my overachieving, we labeled it.
That's a nice label, man. It's good.
And what we did was we blended it, and then this was about 5 years old. So cheers.
Awesome, man. So I judged homebrew competitions.
Yeah.
I am not a sophisticated palate.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm pretty binary, good, bad.
Yeah.
It is. I get champagne.
Yeah. For me, and I know how the blend was, because the blend was mostly. There's only really two beers based. It was a sour blonde ale and a sour red ale. So for me, it comes more of the red ale, which has got more of the fruity, cherry, toffee kind of things, a little bit of the red wine thing.
Yeah.
And it's aging very well. It's been sitting warm until a few days ago to cool it down for this. But it's aged very nicely. The sourness isn't too strong.
Yeah.
If you're used to sour beers, it's not too strong. It's not too biting. It's just really light, effervescent. And it's aging really well. Sometimes these beers can go off kind of sideways on you, and they'll get really sour and then kind of undrinkable. But this is really just nice.
Yeah, I like this. I like sour. Yeah, you're right. It's not punchy in the face.
Yeah.
Sour.
Yeah. And so something like this, especially when we were making them, sour beers were very in vogue in craft brewing, and we wanted to be a part of that kind of process. So this beer in the barrels took about 2 years, and then it's bottled, and then we aged. It's been aging since then. So
is this a style that? Why? I don't know if you can even.
Yeah.
Why would the style be? Was it like out of necessity? Was it like someone said, I want to just make an aged
Yeah.
fermented beer. Or a sour beer, or
Yeah, so I think what we were borrowing from a couple places, which is in general, these beers have a roots in Belgian style production of lambics and goose, and so we've borrowed some of those techniques. Now within the club, a former member of the club decided, hey, we want to do this barrel aging project. So we knew this would take years, right? We knew this would be a project, not a one-off weekend. It would be years.
Yeah.
And so we got those barrels, and then we got enough people in the club because it's a 60-gallon barrel with 5-gallon batches. So you need 8, 10 people, something like that, 12 people, depending on how much beer they add. And then we knew it would take a while, so then we got the best resources because we had friends that were professional brewers making these beers.
Yeah.
So do this, age it, wait, don't touch it. And,
the hardest part.
The hardest part. And then so yes, at the time, yes, you could buy these beers, but also so for people watching today, they might say, oh well, there's tons of sour beer breweries and tons of stuff. Well, that took 10 years to happen.
Yeah, an overnight success.
It
took 10 years.
It took a long time for that to be. Oh, now it's commonplace. Back then it wasn't. So this was like, hey, what project can we do? What challenge? That's what homebrewing is. That some people say, oh well, you just go buy it. Well, that didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. Now it's different. But you can't. But if you also want to make not just have a couple of bottles that I'm aging, I want gallons of it to do blends. So like I said, this is a blend, but we've done blends with fruit. We've done other weird things.
Yeah.
And people do their own little spin on it, and so it's cool. And that's kind of the nerdy part of the hobby is, hey, we had 12 people take all this beer home. They did something with it a year later where it's all 12 different versions of it now, and there's different games you can play. And so I still have original. Because what we did was we put these all into kegs, so they're kind of encapsulated in time, and so I can always make new blends if I want to of those old beers and just see how they're doing and stuff. So because the sour beers are kind of always living, they're always kind of around. They're not unless certain things happen to them, they kind of just always exist, and they're always pretty good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, I would say you could pass this for like I don't know like a champagne wine.
Yeah, especially, yeah.
Yeah.
It has a lot of the wine character, and this was, I believe, 2016 was the second vintage, so there is still a lot of the oak from the original barrels and the wood. It still has a lot of that wine residual in it, so yeah. So.
Is this something you would make only when you're experienced?
It is a more advanced, though to be fair, it's gotten a lot easier to make styles like this, I would say.
Because it sounds like it can run away from you if you don't control a lot of things. Because from what I understand, I think we've spoken about a sour brewer and a, I don't know, you say traditional brewer, how you can't mix equipment.
Yes.
And cleanliness is important.
Yep.
Right? So if cleanliness is important, that means that this is, bacteria is involved. And
it is something we typically dedicate its own equipment to. Now, that's the cold side. That's pre-boiling. It's post-boiling equipment. Pre-boil, it's all being boiled and cleaned. It should be okay. So you dedicate other stuff to it. I think the hard part, at least when we started doing it, was where do we get these this bacteria? Where do we get these cultures to start it?
Yeah.
And back then, we were fortunate. We got some cultures from a commercial brewery, but the main way was to take dregs of bottles. Like if someone wanted to take the stuff that was at the bottom of this, this is yeast and bacteria.
Yeah.
They could take this and propagate it.
This is your sourdough bread.
Exactly. Same, basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Now there's economies of homebrewing that exist that didn't exist before, where you can go buy packets of the best stuff and edit, and then wait a year, and then it'll be really good. It'll be and there's I think you got to plug it because it's the best resource on the internet for it. Is there's a Facebook group called Milk the Funk, which is like 60,000 people, and it's got its own wiki and everything. It's well maintained, and you can ask questions, and you can find really good resources on how to make these beers yourself.
All right.
And what are the tips and tricks and things like that. So there's so much resource that there wasn't around before. You're kind of guess and check.
And it's quite the investment. I mean, it's a year.
Yeah.
And if you mess up.
Yeah, it's also, I would say it's a lot of time to wait, but there's known things you shouldn't do. I guess there's good ground rules. And that one thing is you don't want it to expose it to any beer after yeast has been added. You don't want yeast or bacteria. You don't want to add too much air to it. So what will occur in the case of a sour beer is if too much air is exposed, it'll basically turn into vinegar. Because acetic acid will grow and it'll turn into vinegar, which people have made great vinegars out of old sour beer too.
And then you pretend that's what you did from the beginning.
Exactly.
I made vinegar.
That was always the plan.
That's right.
So it's an investment in time, and there's some things, and I think that's why it's risk. The risk is you're not sure if something's bad's going to happen, and then you're not sure, is this bad or is this what should happen? Because it could go through phases where, wait, hold on, this doesn't smell good.
Yeah.
Is it bad?
But once you break it, can you close it up again?
Well, in the terms of this bottle, we should get this one done. But if you're in a barrel, you can sample it. There's ways of sampling it that won't hurt it, and things like that. And then you'll know. And this is what happens at sour beer breweries. They try everything, do everything exactly what they should do, and a barrel can have characters they know won't go away, so they get rid of it because they know it'll actually hurt other beers if they blended it later on. Okay. So they know what won't go away. And so there's, the good ones will dump some fraction of their beer. If they know there's a problem, they'll just get it out of the system. So.
That's sad.
It is sad. It is really sad.
Yeah, it's a dumb beer.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good. I like that.
Appreciate that.
That flavor.
Great. So another one, again, a kind of example of what we've done homebrewing. So also barrel aged, but stout. So I think for me, I've not made as many barrel aged sour beers as much anymore. It's just kind of me and just my style of brewing. And unfortunately this barrel program we did five or six vintages of it. And then there was not enough. You need that critical mass of people to be invested in doing it, and we're going to do it. And then that got tough as time went on. So so
because that volume's tough to do by yourself.
You need 12 people to be in it, and there was always 7 people, but really you need like 12 people.
Right.
So, but we're more than happy to bring it back at some point if people if as the shifts as tastes change, we may bring this back again.
Yeah.
But it was good for what it was. So what we've done recently, this is a more recent batch, is we were able to secure a number of smaller 15-gallon bourbon barrels from a distillery in Sonoma.
Okay.
And so every home brewer got the barrel, and the barrel came sealed, empty, and we've put beer into that. So in kind of modern craft beer brewing, like barrel aged beers are really big.
Yeah.
And so this was a stout I wanted to do. So higher alcohol, bigger stout, take the barrel character on.
Yeah.
So I did that by myself at home. So I brewed 15 gallons. And so 15 gallons, okay. Well,
what a sacrifice, man.
What a sacrifice, yes.
Yeah.
And the 15 gallons, okay, so 15 gallons, so 5-gallon batches. But because it's a bigger, higher alcohol beer, that's like making 30 gallons of beer.
Yeah.
Because you have to boil it down and reduce it and everything. So it's actually a lot more work.
Okay.
But it's worth it, and I think this turned out really well. So this is barrel aged stout. It aged for about 6 months in a bourbon barrel. That's usually they can go longer, but because the barrels are smaller, it goes quicker. The aging happens more rapidly because of surface area and volume. So this one, unfortunately, didn't carbonate very well, but I think the flavors are still really nice. So give this a shot. The carbonation I can talk about a little bit. What I want to do is recarbonate this in the bottle. That's common in homebrewing, is to recarbonate with sugar and yeast in the bottle. It's too high in alcohol. The yeast will not restart.
Okay.
So it has a little bit of fizz, but not as much as I wanted. So
right.
I'm figuring that out. There's tricks, but yeah.
That is, it's viscousy.
Viscous. Yeah.
That's pretty good. It's I don't know, caramelly, toffee.
Yeah, caramelly, toffee. Yep. It has the notes. It doesn't taste like as boozy as bourbon, but it has what I would call the integration of the stout with the barrel.
Yeah.
I really like that a lot. And so what people tend to do with this is they'll age a barrel-aged beer. Though people really like when you add adjuncts, you add new flavors to it, coffee or coconut or cinnamon. So ones I like to do is I like to add coffee, and then I like to add cinnamon. I've done that before too, and that tastes really nice. It all kind of comes together into a new product, so it's really cool.
This is very good. I would say for my palate, you could not drink like bottles and bottles.
No.
This is like you drink.
Samplers. Yeah, this is what you're having. Yeah. Though for me, and the goal of this one was to be more drinkable, because I had done higher alcohol beers, and I always thought they had this thinness from the alcohol, the heat, and it. Even if you didn't want to have too much of it, even because it felt kind of hurt to drink it a little bit, though it was tasty, it was not that. And so I talked to a lot of professional brewers and read a lot about stuff about how they're making these. And there's a lot of information about how to brew and how to add viscosity and things to beer. They all seem to not do what I wanted, so I kind of just picked a method of brewing, which is what they call high gravity bringer, or really increasing your potential alcohol levels, but it's not fermenting as low as it would, so in theory, it leaves behind more residual sugars and stuff. And there's a couple camps online of people say, well, that doesn't how that works and things like that.
There's always camps online.
You don't know how that works and stuff. But in what I've tasted, this works for stouts. If you do it this way, the beers come out tasting with enough viscosity that the alcohol doesn't. It balances out.
Yeah.
So.
It doesn't sting you in the back of the throat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm really, really proud of this one.
Which is why you don't have a glass of bourbon.
Yeah, exactly. You have a little bit of bourbon.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess you can have a glass of bourbon.
You can have a glass.
It's a rough day.
And the cool thing with the barrels is you can reuse them. So
you don't. So I would assume the barrels is so whatever was aged in the barrels previously then imparts its flavor onto whatever
correct.
you're doing.
Exactly.
So you don't suck out all the stuff from the sidewall of the barrel.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have as a porous vessel, right?
Yeah.
There's what's really cool about barrels is there's no glue. It's all the
Right.
hoops.
Yeah.
It sticks it together.
Yeah.
So there's no things that are gonna maybe mess up your beer up later, kind of thing. So what you do with like the sour project, the wine barrels, that wine character goes in the beer.
Yeah.
And then just diffusion, right? The liquid's in, liquid's out.
Yeah.
And then with the bourbon barrel, that bourbon gets soaked in.
Yeah.
And then we've reused like the sour program. We use that barrels 5 or 6 times, which is great. We could just
you're just replacing it with beer.
putting new beer in.
No, I mean the sidewall is now.
Yeah, the sidewall is now beer mixtures of beer and wine and beer and bourbon or whatever. Exactly. And with the bourbon barrel, the flavors are so strong you can get a few beers out of it. So I went with a strong beer, dark,
first,
absorb that.
Yeah.
And then what we had done actually with Vibe, we did a separate large bourbon barrel project, and we did Belgian triple afterwards. After we did a big beer, we did Belgian triple, and I wanted to replicate that because I loved how the triple tasted with a little bit of the bourbon character, not as much.
All right.
And so and that can age longer, and so you can get more use out of it. And then, unfortunately, just as brewing schedules go, you don't get to refill it as frequently as you need to. And with these barrels, you really need to empty them and refill them immediately. It sounds counterintuitive that sanitary conditions, because wood is not sanitary. It's only as clean as you keep it, but you need to keep it clean.
Yeah.
And so if you let it sit, it ages, things get into it, and then you could have mold and stuff. And so you got to just keep turning it over. And so if you're not ready, and that's another thing I said, the project, we want to bring it back. It's not only 8 or 12 people, but it's everyone's got to pick 24 hours to meet up, do everything. It's a lot of scheduling. So
yeah. Oh yeah, it's a big project, right?
It's a big project.
Time's ticking.
Time's ticking, yeah, exactly. So very happy with this bourbon barrel project. It was a lot of fun.
So you have your homebrewer, great, your homebrewer extraordinary. You've won some contests.
Yep.
Give us your resume on your contest.
So I've helped run a lot of them, but the most notable winning was the Romancing the Beer, the local homebrew competition. Romancing the Beer has 2 categories that are the best of show winners, where the best of show winner gets to brew their beer professionally. So one year I submitted a lot of beers, and it tends to be in homebrewing or any type of these competitive things where there's multiple entries. You tend to enter a lot and hope to see how well you place.
Yeah.
Because it's all blind judging up to the end. So you're not ever sure how everyone's going to go. Even if you think your beers are very high quality, things can happen. So I entered...
because people are judging them.
They're judging them. It's all stochastic. It's all random. Like, this beer is very good, but this beer is slightly better. And, biases occur and stuff. Not just about the best beer. It's about the sum total of all your beers. So I was fortunate enough. One year I won both the best of show for the whole thing and the Belgian best of show.
All right.
So 2 different beers, a Schwartz beer and then a Belgian single, which is like a low alcohol Belgian style beer. Both won. So I was able to brew both of those beers professionally. So I did one beer at Institution. So it was a lager. It was their first lager.
What year?
That was 2017.
Okay.
I think it was 2017.
Okay.
It should have been. I think this popped up on Facebook memories. I think recently.
What would you do without? I would not know anybody's birthday without.
Yeah, we don't know anyone's birthday. Yeah. It's your birthday, right?
Yeah. All right. Sure.
And then we did the Belgian single at Twisted Oak, and so we did those beers. So those beers came out. Those turned out really well. And actually, it was kind of an epilogue to that was that Belgian single got picked up again to be brewed down in San Diego.
All right.
So it'll be happening this summer.
Wow.
It's called I think it's called Homebrews, the Summer of Homebrew or Homebrew Summer through San Diego Beer News. And so I submitted my recipe. I think it helps when you give them a full recipe sheet and all the details and everything.
You don't leave the secret ingredient out?
No secret ingredients left out.
Did it help that you said award winning?
I did not bring that up. I didn't want to bring too much.
Well, I would say that's even better, right?
Yeah, I would say yeah. So I should have, but I presented that one, and it was picked by a brewery called Savage Wood Brewing down in North County, San Diego. So we'll be brewing that one this summer.
Okay. And when will it be ready for consumption?
That's a great idea. That's a great question. I don't know when, because we haven't set a brew date yet.
All right.
But it'll be this summer. That's the whole point of the project, was to because I mentioned, a lot of places or a lot of breweries were started as homebrewers. They want to kind of give back to the
Yeah.
homebrewers and kind of pump everyone back up. And this
Yeah.
is everyone get back out to tasting rooms this summer and everything, is to let people see that. So
Yeah.
do these examples. So yeah. So
Let me know. I would take a trip down to San Diego.
We'll go down there. Yeah. That'd be great. It'll be a lot of fun because.
I will be your cinematographer.
Yeah. Come on down.
Yeah, for sure.
So no, it'll be a lot of fun, and that's the cool part of homebrewing is you can brew something. Well, I guess the kind of you would think this is any hobby if it's somewhat competitive is, well, how well did I do against other people?
Yeah.
And the judging aspect's cool because the sheets, really, it's blind. No one knows who submitted what. And so you can say, hey, this was a really good example of the beer.
Yeah.
And then it went all the way. And it's really the real tough part of these competitions is that you can make it to the final table, but the final table is really all about how's the whole table tasting. It's kind of everything together. The final tables can be 20 plus beers.
Yeah.
So you have 5 judges all going around saying, well, this and that. And
I would say the hardest part of judging in a competition like that is, it's you're supposed to judge the beer that you taste.
Yeah.
But for me, I was always trying to judge the beers that I was tasting, right?
Sure.
And worrying about, you don't want to give a 10 because the 10 might be coming up later on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say that was the hardest part for me of judging.
Sure. And it's absolutely right because your first one will set you up for the rest of the flight. And typically in judging, you only do about 8 beers because, well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then you might have so many beers you need to break it up into multiple people.
Yeah.
So then you have to maybe you have 24 beers. So you have 8 people all saying, well, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one, and then they all come together and try to find the top 3.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you're trying to balance everything out. And is it and these are all your sensory perceptions.
Yeah.
So it's how you doing that day.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
What'd you have for breakfast?
What'd you have for breakfast? What's going on in your head, and so you're tasting everything, and so it's always that one moment, and you're just trying to be as fair as possible to those beers in front of you. So
I mean, because it could be you the next year it could be you getting judged.
Exactly. So you just try to balance everything out. So I think in my because I've judged a lot of homebrew competitions, I tend to use there's the point ranges in homebrew competitions go from about 0 to 50. Really, you don't go below 10, and very few people go above 45. But I try to use the whole range in terms of saying, hey, some people think, well, let's leave those last 5 points for the best. I'm like, well, let's use those because that's our barometer for saying a really good beer, right?
Yeah.
That's where if I'm telling you this is a 44-point beer, I really mean it. Like I know this is a very good beer.
Yeah.
I don't know how I give those other points out, but I need to be able to use the dynamic range of the scale to push us in a direction.
So would this is totally off tangent, right?
Yeah,
So would the better strategy be a beer you like, you rank it high, because I've been at tables where they bring back beers to tie break or rank.
Yeah.
Right, and then you do it at that point because you have your top 3 at the table instead of all 8.
Yes, and so the goal of BJCP judging, or what they tell you the goal is, and most people do follow this, is that you're judging and trying to be objective as possible at what's in front of you. Is it meeting the style guidelines? You may love it, but it might not be in the right category.
Yeah.
And that's where things about how much you know about the style come into play, because the sheet says things, but the sheets have large ranges in terms of somewhat hoppy to very hoppy. So that means they're still in category.
And what does that mean?
What does it even mean? And then it kind of, to me, at least how I've talked to the higher ranked judges, the people that have done the judging for a long time, have rank, because you accrue points and you get rank.
Yeah.
Yet another competition within the competition.
That's cool.
Is that you get to see, well, how do you think about beer?
And some people take judging more
very seriously.
Well, I mean, not serious as in quality, but serious as in the points that they accumulate.
The points they accumulate, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And so the thing there is, in the end is, how does it taste? Is it working? Is it all working?
Yeah.
And if you look at the style points breakdown, everything is in flavor. Most of the points come from flavor.
Yeah.
Very little come from appearance.
Yeah.
Some come from mouthfeel, and then there's overall. So you're all end up being in the same place. But then, to me, and this happened at a recent competition actually, there was very divisive style is hazy IPA, New England IPA, and I felt that though other people might not like this because of a subjective opinion, I thought this was technically, objectively, the best one I've had in a long time, especially for homebrewing. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm giving this higher points because it's very good. It's a very good example.
I heard the last one I was in.
Yeah.
They were hating on the.
And that
even
happens.
before they even opened the bottle.
And that happens. So what can you do?
No. Just because there's people involved, there's going to be bias,
people,
right? Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say before we take off?
I don't know. This was a lot of fun.
Man.
We'll be sitting around, hanging out, trying these a little bit more. But this was great. And if you're looking at homebrewing, in Ventura County, Vibe Again,
Yeah.
I mentioned we'll be back out there having public meetings and out at breweries, hanging out, and public brew days, and plenty of things scheduled. So yeah, Ventura Independent Beer Enthusiasts or vivebeer.com. I
Yeah.
should know that better. Yeah.
Well, I would say that area is a good area for craft beer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Stumbling distance from one brewery
Yeah,
to the other.
and there's new places, like I think for me, not just craft breweries, because I love like Ventura Coast and Topa Topa and
Yeah.
things, but Fluid State, I gotta give them a shout out. They're one of the best
Yeah.
beer places, restaurants in
They
Ventura County.
they get a lot of good stuff on their board.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Hey,
I'll see you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.
Thanks, guys. Andy Carter, homebrewer extraordinaire. Like and subscribe, please. Share these videos with your friends. I'd like to grow this channel and reach as many people as I can. If there's a brewery that you want to see on the show that hasn't been, please send them a link to the show, and they can find me via social media. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys next time.